day, everyone. In this report, we are going to tackle the topic of Lesson 10, which is managing the self. Now just sit back, relax, and don't get stressed out.
Learning to be a better student. Many students are being left behind by an educational system that some people believe is in crisis. Improving educational outcomes will require efforts on many fronts, but there are solutions involved in helping students to better regulate their learning through the use of effective learning. So here are the 10 techniques. Number 1. Elaborative interrogation. Generating an explanation for why an explicitly stated fact or concept is true. You see, when using elaborative interrogation, you ask or we ask ourselves questions about how and why things work, and then produce answers to these questions. Elaborative interrogation is an effective strategy for aiding memory. The idea is that relevant information is not always readily activated when we are attempting to gather knowledge. All previous learning are connected, making self-explanation easier. It will allow us students to see the relationship between the various concepts. Number 2 is the self-explanation technique. Explaining how new information is related to known information or explaining steps taken during problem solving. Self-explanation may improve learning by assisting with the incorporation of new information, and this information with pre-existing prior knowledge. We make inferences about causal connections and conceptual relationships to improve understanding. The process of self-explanation will assist us in recognizing what we don't know, filling in missing information, monitoring understanding, and modifying fusions of new information with prior knowledge when discrepancies or deficiencies are detected. Number 3 is summarization. One popular technique for accomplishing these goals involves having students write summaries of to-be-learned texts. Summarization strategy has been implemented in many different ways across studies, making it difficult to draw general conclusions about its efficacy. Studies show that summarization is not a single strategy, but a family of strategies. Depending on the specific instructions given, students' summarize may consist of single words, consist of sentences, or longer paragraphs, be limited in length or not, capture an entire text or only a portion, be written or spoken aloud, or be produced from memory or with the text present. Number 4. Highlighting and underlining. More systematic evaluations of actual textbooks and other students' material have supported the claim that highlighting and underlining are common behaviors. Highlighting and underlining are common because it's used to assist us students in organizing what we have read by highlighting what is important. This strategy teaches us students to highlight or underline only the most important words, phrases, and vocabulary. Fifth is the keyword mnemonic. Students uses the keyword mnemonic, which is a technique based on interactive imagery. The potential benefit of the keyword mnemonic have been extensively explored, and its power partly resides in the use of interactive images. It helps us encode information more effectively so that it can be easily memorized and remembered when we are creating an image in our mind. In our personal experience as students, before quizzes, exams, or even reviewing something important, we often look for a keyword that will fit at that something that we need to remember. The number 6 technique, imagery for text. Evidence concerning the impact of imagery on sentence learning largely comes from investigations of other mnemonic techniques in which imagery instructions have been included in a comparison condition. This technique describes things for the reader so that they can get a clear picture of what the composer is attempting to convey. This allows us as readers to understand what the character are seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, or hearing in order to bring the story to life. Number 7. Rereading. Rereading simply increases the total amount of information encoded regardless of the kind of level of information within the text. Rereading technique provides us an opportunity to gain a thorough understanding of a book's plot or character development which is not possible when reading a book only once. Exploring the text and illustration allows us to delve deeper into the message of the story and make new connections, preparing them for more complex narratives. The eighth technique, practice testing. Practice testing are used in two ways, which is first to distinguish texting that is completed as low stakes or no stakes practice or learning activity outside a class from summative assessments that are administered by an instructor in class, and secondly to encompass any form of practice testing that student would be able to engage in on their own. You see, practice testing, also known as retrieval practice, consists of frequent testing or quizzing over a period of time to encourage us students' memory recall of the material. Number 9. Distributed practice. Distributed practice is a technique whereby the student distributes his or her study effort in a given course over many study sessions that are relatively short in duration. So this technique is comparable to mass practice, also known as cramming, in which the student conducts a few but lengthy study sessions for a given course. And the 10th technique is interleaved practice. Interleaved practice is when you are learning two or more related concepts or skills instead of focusing exclusively on one concept or skill at a time. Alternating between them can be beneficial. For example, if you are learning topic A and topic B, rather than practice only A on one day and only B on the next, you can practice both on each day by incorporating a mixture of the two topics or by switching back and forth between them.
Goal setting and happiness. Goal setting in happiness entails deciding what you want to achieve and developing a strategy to achieve the result you strive for. It is a major component of personal development and is regarded as an effective tool for achieving goals by ensuring that a person has a clear understanding of what they must do in order to achieve their goal. It is closely associated with a desire to better oneself and one's overall happiness. In other words, life goals represent something other than the daily grind. They enable us to pursue goals of our own choosing and feel a sense of accomplishment when we achieve them. Having said that, striving to be the best we can sometimes lead to happiness in and of itself.
Happiness is a mental state of well-being that is characterized by a range of positive emotion. Happiness is a feeling of positivity in your life. This is where you can sleep every night without worrying people or things around you. Goal setting involves deciding what you want to accomplish and devising a plan to achieve the result you strive for. Goal setting is the process of identifying something that you want to accomplish and establishing measurable goals and time frames. Goal guidelines. First, goals should be challenging but realistic and attainable. If you set your goals that are too easy, you will reach them without much difficulty, which will not provide you with a real sense of accomplishment. In choosing your goal in life, it should be realistic or having a sensible and practical idea of what you can achieve, but at the same time, it is challenging. You need to push yourself to your limits because sometimes it is more fun in challenging yourself. Second, avoiding focusing on goal attainment. It is not possible to judge whether every goal made will ultimately be attainable. It is more likely that you will not reach every goal that you set for yourself. When it comes to accomplishing your goal, you need to be prepared for disappointment since not all of the objectives we set in our lives can be achieved. Therefore, we encounter such circumstances. Instead of focusing on the goal that we didn't achieve, we move to the next one that we have set. Third, continuous goal setting. Goals setting is a process that never ends. Once one goal is achieved, another goal with a different direction should be created to take its place. In continuous goal setting, this is a process that after you finish successfully the first goal, you need to proceed to another goal that is different to the previous goal. You need to set your goal to another direction that you want to achieve. Last, feedback. Having consistent feedback contributes to the effectiveness of goal setting. You need to have a regular feedback to those people who witness your experience what will achieving your goals, because this is also contribute to the effectiveness of goal setting.
The darker side of goal setting. Temporary happiness. Temporary happiness is with short-term gain at long-term expense. This instant gratification predominates in today's society. Situations arise where specific goals may lead to temporary happiness. A contrast of temporary happiness is dependent on current situations and comes and goes with time. And often, this brief happiness is associated with a lesser good which promises immediate pleasure and is more tempting in comparison to the greater good which may require more sacrifice and effort. What is self-compassion? Self-compassion is the ability to turn understanding, acceptance, and love inward. It includes an element of wisdom, a recognition of our own common humanity. This means accepting the fact that along with everyone else on the planet, we're flawed and imperfect individuals, just as likely as anyone else to be hit by the slings and arrows of outrageous misfortunes. Moreover, self-compassion is also defined as being composed of the three main components, which are the self-kindness, a sense of common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness. Self-kindness is exactly what it sounds like, being kind to yourself. It entails being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. It does not require that we have an inflated view of ourselves, but instead allows us to accept ourselves as we are. It is also not an evaluation of ourselves at all, but it is an attitude we adopt towards our own failure and suffering. Moreover, self-kindness allows us to embrace our basic, imperfect humanity. Common humanity. Common humanity is a perspective that views our own failings and feelings of inadequacy as part of the human condition shared by nearly everyone. The very definition of being human is that one is mortal, vulnerable, and imperfect. Therefore, self-compassion involves recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy is part of the shared human experience, something that we all grow through rather than something that happens to me alone. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is a non-judgmental, receptive mind state in which thoughts and feelings are observed as they are, without suppressing or denying them. It requires taking a balanced approach to our negative emotions so that feelings are neither suppressed nor exaggerated. This equilibrated stance stems from the process of relating personal experiences to those of others who are also suffering, thus putting our own situation into a larger perspective. Self-compassion phrases. When you're feeling stress or emotional pain, it's helpful to have a set of phrases memorized to help you remember to be more compassionate to yourselves in the moment. It's often a lot harder than it sounds, but with the right techniques, we can learn to make it a habit that sticks. You can take a deep breath, put your hand over your heart, or gently hug yourself, and repeat the following phrases. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of my life. May I be kind to myself, and I give myself the compassion I need.
Health psychology and behavioral medicine are founded on the biopsychosocial model in which health and disease reflect reciprocal influences among biological, psychosocial, and sociocultural processes. Health psychology and behavioral medicine include three major topics: health, behavior, and risk reduction, psychosocial aspects of medical illness and medical care, and psychosocial and psychobiological influences on disease. Stress and its sources. Stress is not always easy to recognize. Stress can be defined as any type of change that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. Stress is your body's response to anything that requires attention or action. There are many different things in life that can cause stress. Some of the main sources of stress include work, finances, relationships, parenting, and day-to-day inconveniences. Next is stress response, which has three components. First is the general adaptation syndrome. Now, what is general adaptation syndrome? General adaptation syndrome or gas is the pattern of physical changes of the body goes through after being exposed to stress. It is not medical diagnosis, rather it is a process of the body goes through in response to stress. The second one is the fight or flight, tend and befriend. Stress can trigger the body's response to a perceived threat or danger, known as the fight or flight response. During this reaction, certain hormones like adrenaline and cortisol are released. This speeds the heart rate, slows digestion, shunts blood flow to major muscle groups, and changes various other autonomic nervous functions, giving the body a burst of energy and strength. The last one is cognitive appraisal. Lazarus argued that the experience of stress differs significantly between individuals depending on how they interpret an event and the outcome of a specific sequence of thinking patterns called appraisals, according to Lazarus 1991. Cognitive appraisals refers to the personal interpretation of a situation that ultimately influences the extent of which the situation is perceived as stressful. Now let us move on to stress, disease, and health. Studies have found many health problems related to stress. Stress seems to worsen or increase the risk of conditions like obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, depression, gastrointestinal problems, and asthma. Cancer. Being stressed doesn't directly increase the risk of cancer. They have found no evidence that those who are more stressed are more likely to get cancer. But it can be harder for some people to keep healthy during stressful times, which can lead to an increased risk of cancer. Heart disease. Stress may lead to high blood pressure, which can pose a risk for heart attack and stroke. Stress also may contribute to such cardiovascular disease risk such as smoking, overeating, and lack of physical activity.
Let us now move on to depression. Depression appears to be a stressor that increases the likelihood of heart disease. Depressed people have a faster heartbeat when at rest. They also tend to have high blood pressure, and those who have an episode of depression have a higher risk of developing heart problems. Once having had a heart attack, depressed people are more likely to have further health problems. If depression is treated, these stress-related responses subside and heart rate and blood pressure decreases. Now let's move on to anxiety. Anxiety is also with heart disease, possibly because it can lead to high blood pressure and changes in cardiac functioning. The duration or severity of an anxious feeling can sometimes be out of proportion to the original trigger or stressor. Physical symptoms such as increased blood pressure and nausea may also develop. Let's now proceed to the different coping strategies. The first strategy is the problem-focused and emotion-focused coping. Problem focus involves the cognitive strategy of facing the problem and trying to actively solve the problem, while emotion-focused coping involves responding to the stress in an emotional manner, especially by using defense mechanisms. Many individuals successfully use both types of coping when adjusting to a stressful circumstance. Over the long term, problem-focused coping is what usually works best. The next strategy is the optimism and positive thinking. A positive mood allows us to process information more effectively, and it also increases altruism and raises self-esteem. An optimistic attitude is better overall because it gives us a sense that we are controlling our own environment. It is also the practice of focusing on the good in any given situation, and it can have a big impact on our physical and mental health. The next strategy is the cognitive restructuring and positive self-talk. Cognitive restructuring involves modifying maladaptive thoughts, ideas, and beliefs that maintain an individual's problem. Negative self-talk can become self-fulfilling and can destroy self-confidence, while positive self-illusion is the ability to maintain some positive illusions about oneself and the world. Happy people have mildly inflated opinions of themselves and exaggerated beliefs about their ability to control the world. But sometimes, imagining a negative outcome, or what we call as defense pessimism, is important because it can allow a person to prepare for an anticipated stressful event. Let's now move on to the next strategy, which is the self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that one can master a situation and produce positive outcomes. Self-efficacy can improve an individual's ability to cope and be mentally healthy. Self-efficacy is also one of the best predictors of positive therapy outcomes. Let's now proceed to social support. Social support is information and feedback from others that one is loved and valued. A lack of social support has been associated with higher rates of depression, suicide, cancer, mental illness, and death following the death of a spouse. The next one is assertive behavior. There are strategies for increasing assertiveness, including setting up a time for discussion, stating your problem, expressing your feelings, and making your request. Acting assertively results in empowerment, control, and positive relationships. Assertiveness builds equal relationships. The last one is psychology and life dealing with conflict. This scale helps students differentiate between assertive, aggressive, manipulative, and passive behavior. With psychology, one can gain self-confidence by learning and knowing more about oneself and their personality, and one can be able to improve on dealing with conflict better.